When you talk about an exercise session, one isolated single exercise session, there are two factors to consider. The intensity factor and the duration factor. Duration is the amount of time spent training, and intensity refers to the percentage of momentary effort. And this term intensity tends to be misunderstood. Some people think that by increasing the duration of their workouts, they're increasing the intensity, which is ridiculous. It's just the opposite. Every time you increase the duration, you have to decrease the intensity. These two things exist inversely to each other. They're mutually exclusive. You can't have a lot of one and a lot of the other. It's demonstrated by a very simple inverse ratio graph. It demonstrates the universal relationship that exists between intensity and duration. This is not a brainchild of Mike Mentzer. This is a basic law of physics. Universal principle. It applies to all activities, not just weight training, chopping down trees, studying books, sex, whatever. The more intensely you do something, whenever the intensity increases a little bit, the duration has to decrease a lot. And if you want to build big muscles fast, then you've got to train as intensely as possible, because that is the one factor most responsible for building mass. And if you want to build mass, you've got to train for short periods so you can train intensely. That's the nature of the relationship. You can train either hard or you can train long, but you can't train hard and long. It's impossible. Not because I say you can't, but because it's impossible. Is there anybody in here who can sprint for a mile? What's the longest sprint in Olympic competition? Anybody know? 400 meters. Why isn't there an 800-meter sprint? Or a mile sprint? It's laughable, yeah, because it's ridiculous. It's impossible. Just like it's impossible to train hard for 2 hours. Nobody can train really hard. When I talk about hard, I mean maximally. All-out effort for 2 hours. If you train as hard as you possibly can, each and every set, then the majority of you in here cannot train in 30 minutes. I'm talking about as hard as you possibly can. Every set to total failure with minimal rest in between sets. Just enough rest between sets so you can go to your next set, resume your next set, and go to muscular failure as opposed to cardiovascular failure. That is not rush so fast that your cardiovascular system becomes the limiting system. You want to go to muscular failure. If you do that, you will probably not train in 30 minutes.
How long might it be trained? Would that be 30 seconds?
It doesn't matter. It's going to vary from muscle group to muscle group because of the demands placed on the cardiovascular system. You rest just long enough between sets so you can resume the next set and go to muscular failure as opposed to cardiovascular failure. You ever compare the calves of a sprinter to the calves of a distance runner? I use this example all the time, but it's one of the best there is. The sprinter always has a large muscular calf. The sprinter always has, or the distance runner always has a stringy little calf. Because he overtrains, he's chronically overtraining. And I would venture to say the majority of bodybuilders, top bodybuilders today who are training over 2 hours a day, would look like distance runners if they weren't taking steroids. They're so grossly overtrained. You just cannot recover from that much training. We talked about it earlier. During the demonstration phase of the seminar, what's the first thing your body has to do after a workout? You stimulate growth first, hopefully. If you train hard enough and stimulated growth, you will grow, but what has to happen first of all? Recover. If you allow enough time for recovery, then you have to allow enough time for growth. If you do those three things, stimulate growth, number one, allow enough time for recovery, it does take time, up to 48 hours in some cases, depending upon the severity of the exercise and the volume of the exercise. Then another block of time is required for that growth to manifest itself. Growth never precedes recovery. Recovery always comes first. You don't need a 21-inch arm to survive, but you do need to continually recover and replace your precious physical resources and reserves. If you didn't continually recover from exercise, obviously you would die very rapidly, very soon. You've got to stimulate growth first through high-intensity training, allow enough time for recovery, and then allow enough time for growth. If you train, again, before recovery takes place, then the growth process can't take place, because now you've got to recover from that next workout again. If you allow enough time for recovery to take place, but not enough time for growth to take place, you still won't grow. It takes time to recover and it takes time to grow. So I'm saying you should rest from anywhere from 48 to 72 hours between workouts. 6-day-a-week training is always a mistake for the purpose of building muscular mass. If you want to build definition or create definition, then you can't be active enough. Train every day, all day, whatever you want to do.
If you're training volume parts,
Yeah.
you're allowing...
I'm not talking about localized muscle recovery. I'm talking about recovery of the physical system as a whole. Localized muscle recovery actually takes place very rapidly. But you do 10 sets of squats, very, very heavy squats on Monday. Your legs may have recovered by Tuesday, but try to do a heavy back workout on Tuesday. You won't feel the inclination, because your whole system has been called upon. Demands have been made upon all the body's recuperative subsystems, not just the legs. The whole system is called upon. You've got to allow the whole body to recover, not just the legs. Any questions on intensity? You know what intensity means. Percentage of momentary effort.
What about different types of muscle cells, like white and red muscle cells? And the difference in what they do for it? Can you train them both at the same time?
Red and white muscle fibers.
Yeah.
That whole question is fraught with controversy. I was recently in Holland and talked to a Dr. John Voss, an eminent exercise physiologist who was actually the first guy to ever do research on red and white muscle fibers. And he claims the whole thing's a bunch of hokum, because your muscle fibers actually change color from minute to minute. He actually did muscle biopsy on his own leg. He's a distance runner. This was 10, 15 years ago. And he would take biopsies every day on his calf muscles and found they would change color every day. And he believes they'll change color from minute to minute, depending upon things like temperature, activity, metabolic rate, and so forth. So there's no way you can devise an exercise program based on what you think is your predominant muscle fiber type, red or white, or whatever. Even if that were the case, you did have more fast twitch as opposed to slow twitch muscle fibers. Again, as we talked about, as I tried to emphasize during the demonstration part, it's very important that you initiate all your movements very deliberately, slowly, under control. Once the speed of an exercise exceeds a certain rate, momentum takes over. And what happens to the muscular involvement? It's reduced, it's diminished. And yet these same people all train alike. Arnold does 20 sets, 6 days a week. Franco does 20 sets, 6 days a week. Frank Zane does 20 sets, 6 days a week. If they're all so different, why do they train exactly alike? The point of the matter is we aren't all that different physiologically. We're all unique as individuals. But when a young man goes to medical school, or a young woman, and studies muscle physiology, whose physiology is he studying? Everybody. We all have the same muscle physiology. But the biochemical changes leading to muscle growth in Mike Mentzer are the same in Robert Kennedy, Chris Lund, and you. I might grow faster as a result of high-intensity training. But we all will grow faster when each of us trains more intensely. If you're not training, or if you're not gaining fast now, or if you're not gaining at all, you'll gain faster when you train more intensely. Chris Lund will gain more rapidly when he trains more intensely. He may not gain as rapidly as me, yet then again he may gain more rapidly than me.
Why is that though?
Because of innate adaptability. We all have different innate adaptabilities to exercise. Age, existing physical condition, motivation, a lot of different factors. But the underlying muscle physiology is the same. The people who say we all have different training requirements are entirely wrong. They're ignorant of the basic facts regarding muscle physiology. If we all had different physiologies, medical science could not exist. The doctor would have to study each individual as a separate physiological entity. and then learn all the intricacies of his physiology and devise medicine around him. We could not have medical science. The very fact that they can take the basic principles of physiology and apply it to the whole human race is what makes medical science a viable discipline. Make sense? Sounds damn good to me. Any questions? I can't make it any simpler than that. I mean, all the theoretic and academic bullshit aside, I mean, it just follows some common sense. The harder you train, the faster you grow. But it's also true, you can't forget, that the harder you train, the less time you can spend training. Just like the faster you run, the less distance you can run. Sure, you can train as hard as possible for 30 minutes, then diminish the intensity and train for 8 hours after that. But that's not going to result in anything except reduced progress.